100 members of the Association of Garda Sergeants and Inspectors will gather in Dublin today for a protest march to Garda Headquarters on their first day of action. Tony Gallagher, ex-Garda Inspector, ex-Deputy Secretary of the AGSI, currently working with the Ash Tree Risk Group. Is this an appropriate action, Tony?
Well, it's sad that it has come to this. I mean, when you have a police force of mid-management seen fit to go onto the streets to elevate their problem, that doesn't give confidence, and it doesn't give confidence in the leadership and how they've handled this up to date.
Yeah, except though, was there not an offer to defer the roster changes and to discuss this further? And that offer seems to have been ignored.
Well, defer the roster, I mean, that's another extension to the COVID extension type roster, in which there have been 15 of those. But where it's at, Shane, is it's at conciliation, or should be at conciliation still. And that's a forum of discussion for where you should resolve your disputes. Now, the WRC have a preference that all your issues are dealt with at conciliation or prior to being. It's the last resort where you refer to the WRC, and it's premature.
Right, but surely it's not as premature as marching on the streets. I have to say, Tony, and I don't want to overly dramatise it, because they're walking from the gates of the Phoenix Park to, a few hundred metres up to Garda Headquarters into Phoenix Park. So I don't want to overly dramatise it. But yes, I have to say, there's something in me that doesn't like the idea of Gardaí marching on the streets. It just doesn't sit well with me.
Okay, but I suppose there's a lot at stake here, Shane, and at the heart of it is the detective units and the community police, and the Commissioner seems to think that they're more suited to working between the hours of 9 to 5. Now, first of all, they'll be financially discriminated if they do that. And the second piece there is, if you take detectives solely onto the 9 to 5 area, you're losing a level of expertise and the structure being given to young people on how they approach crime. As you know, most serious crime occurs well into the dusk, if not the night time. So you're already losing labour from a force that's not there in terms of specialist units. You're stripping the front line, and you're left with younger members, and this course of action would take away further experience to those guys who would give them direction.
Okay, why not go and make that point in the Workplace Relations Commission?
Well, I understand they have been making these points up until this time. Now, obviously, I'm quite outside this process, but
yeah, sure.
I can give a view on it. But it would certainly seem to be the case that there is some more work to be done at conciliation level, because when you had the results of the ballots coming in, I mean, that was something that was meant to be discussed back at conciliation, and instead the Commissioner must have thrown his hands up. But he's ignored the process. For a person who's overseen the application of legislation and the enforcement of law, he's ignoring a process there where he just suddenly has jettisoned it into the WRC.
Right. I'm sure he'd have a different perspective on it. Could this end up being another blue flu situation? What I think was it the late 1990s we had that extraordinary blue flu? Could we end up in that scenario again?
Not, Shane. You would hope not, Shane. I mean, look, you have a number of areas there where the Commissioner's areas are failing. You have the Garda Inspectorate report. You have the Commission on the Future of Policing and the Operation Model. And already they're saying 1 in 4 Garda stations around the country have 1 in 4 less Gardaí. That's 23% suffering of a drop. You have specialist units being created, like the DMR task force, a plainclothes unit, and they're stripping the uniform presence on the front line. So the people on the front line who are doing the 999 calls, who are arriving at your house, at my house, or a business, they're badly stretched. And I mean, the decisions been made around a couple of areas that the Commissioner of late is making is not good. I mean, he came out recently on the Pat Kenny show. He was talking about staff retention and that he recognises we have a crisis. But he also referenced a core group of the 1980s who are retiring en masse. Now, he could stop that. He could give them the extension until such time as he get back into normal staffing levels. But he doesn't choose to do so.
Tony Gallagher, ex-Garda Inspector, ex-Deputy Secretary of the AGSI, currently working with Ash Tree Risk Group. Thank you for talking to News Talk Breakfast.